Thank you so much for joining us today on Macro Micro Moment. We have with us a very special guest, so I'm going to just get straight into it with him. Adrian Balfour is joining us from Pennsylvania, originally from Northern Ireland, I believe. And before we start talking about the really important topic of Tesla and just EVs in general and robotaxis, I wanted to just talk a little bit about Adrian's background. So, Adrian, my family and I used to go to Ireland about 2 to 3 times a year and hang out on a sheep farm. And I'm not kidding, in Killarney, on the Kerry Road in Killarney, just outside of Killarney. And so then we thought, oh, this is so idyllic. We're going to buy some property. And so we bought 10 acres on the river lawn. And meanwhile, we've gone home, the money's in escrow, and they're finalizing everything. And then the woman who was selling it to us said she wouldn't give the Yanks the fishing rights to the river. This big debate. And so we never actually owned the property. The money sat in escrow for years while they were arguing about whether or not the Yanks should get the fishing rights.
Fishing rights.
Being a sheep farmer never happened. But you are indeed a sheep farmer in Pennsylvania and Ireland. Can you just tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the west of Ireland, in the middle of nowhere, just slightly north of Kerry, and we're about 200 miles north of Kerry. And we have fishing rights, I think, but no one ever pays attention to them. So I think if you didn't get the fishing rights, you'd probably be okay. But no one would pull you over here. They'd just invite you into the pub for a quick drink. It'd be all good. But I grew up in farmland. My dad was a part-time farmer. My brother, full-time farmer. And then I went to work for Ford in Europe, over in London. And when I left Ford, I'd saved up enough money to actually buy a farm in Ireland. And so instead of buying a house, I bought a farm, and then I bought some sheep, then I bought some more sheep, and then I bought some more land, and so on and so forth. And so now we have a fairly sizable sheep farm in Ireland, and we supply meats across all of Northern Ireland. And then roll the dice forward another 20 years, and I bought a farm in Pennsylvania. And guess what I do there? So we have a sheep farm here, and we produce merino sheep. So we produce merino wool, and we make clothing. So we're in the clothing business. So
that's amazing. And I guess I would just want to ask you one more thing about that. The thing that always really troubled me is when they sprayed the sheep in Ireland, like with bright pink or bright green. And what was that just about, like the timing of when they got shorn or sheared? I don't even know how you say that.
No, it's normally like, okay, so there's a couple of different things. It's like, who's pregnant, who's not pregnant, how many babies do you estimate coming from that particular one? Sometimes you'll see numbers on the side of the sheep, and that's sort of like, you put the number 1 on the ewe, and then you'll put the number 1 on that ewe's lamb. So the lamb is identified. You can correlate, make sure that lamb goes with that mother. So like 1 goes with 1, 2 goes with 2, 3 goes with 3, etc. So that's typically the sort of numbering construct. But yeah, it's kind of fun. It's a little bit of you're sort of a biologist trying to grow grass, so get food for the sheep. You're a bit of a weather vulture, trying to check the weather to make sure you get the weather right, because as all farming goes, it's with the weather. And then you're also sort of like a bit of a veterinarian. So diseases happen, and you have to cure them yourself, and then you get to play with toys like big tractors and diggers and stuff like that.
So I saw that on Clarkson Farm.
So. Oh yeah. I drive a Range Rover, and I got a very large green tractor. Very large.
I hope you make money, because he sure as hell doesn't.
Yeah, well, it depends whether you count the Amazon revenues.
All right. Well, so that's just one of the many things you've done. I know you've started a lot of companies, but you also started the National Rugby League. I don't have the term. I know you are the founder of the Seawolves, which is the Seattle rugby team, and then you started the league. Is that correct?
Yeah. So 2017. Well, I sold a company back in 2014, and I was bored, so I started to play rugby again. Not young man's really hard rugby, but old person's rugby kind of thing. But I started playing that, and then as we were going through that process, it was, soccer was able to go professional in the United States. So why haven't you guys not started a professional rugby league? And the answer was back in your face, going like, well, if you feel so passionately about it, why don't you do it yourself? So in a moment of weakness, I said, sure. So about 7 of us got together, a couple of guys from different parts of the country, Houston, Utah, Salt Lake City, San Diego, and
Wow.
other locations. And we put together a league. So there were 7 of us that got together. We played our first championship in 2018. So each 7 of us chipped in. We put the money in to actually create the league and put a league office in place. And then we went back and we actually created our own teams. And so I created the Seattle Seawolves, and then we all played in the competition. And like a really good, true sportsman and a person of great, humility, we went out and we won the first season.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and then the second season, we went out and we won it again because obviously we're very humble people.
The
So it's been going.
happiest day
Yeah.
of my life was we were staying with some friends in Edinburgh, and we
Uh,
had, we started the day with drinks because that's what you do, and then we walked from their house to the All Black.
breakfast wouldn't be breakfast without a nice little pick me up in
That's
Scotland.
exactly right. I learned that from Winston Churchill, actually.
Yeah.
And then we walked to the rugby game, and the Edinburgh team was playing the All Blacks, and I had no idea what was going on. Now I did go to St. Mary's College in California. We had a big rugby team, but I just never grasped the scrum and some of the other aspects of it. But it was so much fun, and now
It's a
paying
lot
attention
of fun
clearly.
to watch.
Yeah,
So much fun, so much action. You've got athletes running back and forwards for 80 minutes, kind of like soccer, but then kind of like football, they get to hit each other. And there's kind of two types of athletes. There's the big, heavy ones that kind of run into each other and wrestle and fight. And then there's the wee, short, fast ones that are running around. And so the big, heavy ones wrestle, and the ball eventually goes to ground, and it comes out to the little fast guys. They
yeah.
kick the ball back and forwards. They run around for a bit until they get tired, and then the big fat guys take over again and wrestle a bit more. And then at the very end, like every good rugby game, they always award it to the All Blacks.
So fun. That's great. Well, congratulations on the victories and the league. So
Yeah.
let's get into the topic that I know you want to talk about and I want to talk about. So what really struck me, I know you worked for Ford, and I'd like you to elaborate on that. But one of the things that really struck me that you said is when Tesla hit $1 million in EV sales, that the major U.S. automakers decided to get in the business, and they had one fatal flaw, which was they didn't have the benefit of designing the car around the software, and so they
Mhm.
really had to they have put themselves in a difficult position. So could you talk about that and just the reason that you think Tesla will continue to, it's a very unpopular subject post Doge,
Sure.
that Tesla may actually continue to be a leader in the EV space. I love the company. I love the guy. I
Mhm.
find him fascinating, but yes, so please tell us what your view on that.
Well, I mean, I worked in the automotive industry, starting in Ford, and then through a couple of different other companies. But I established a sort of a technology consulting company many moons ago that really advises companies on how to implement software-defined vehicles and move into this sort of self-driving space. And we advise a lot of companies, including some of the larger OEMs. One of the things that we have found is that over the years, is that most of the larger companies, more traditional based companies, always looked at Tesla more as more of as a novelty. Okay, their production quality wasn't right. They don't know how to manufacture stuff well. They're playing with electricity, and that's not really viable, really. Okay, so it looked as if it was, not really being taken seriously. And then they sort of like start creeping up towards 1 million units a year. And when you get to 1 million units a year, you're a real car company. And especially the speed at which they did it. And they started to solve some of those quality issues. So the car companies really tried to pivot and say, okay, well, how do we get into the game? And with different EV credits coming out from government, etc., it became more and more attractive. The difficulty is that Tesla has been designed ground up as a software company. So they've used what we call a platform approach to software. So you have a platform of hardware which they produce themselves. You have a platform or an operating system that they produce themselves, and then they have the application and cloud layers, which is how we as human beings interface to it. And they designed that very deliberately from the get-go. You know, other car companies have a culture around, you know, contracting with suppliers to bring parts in and to bring chips in, and then sort of wireframe them together into a package, and then make that package truly excellent, manufacture it and sell it. The difference is if you try and update one of those combined packages versus a definitively created with deliberate, you know, platform approaches. You can approach a platform in the Tesla. Like Tesla has one compute unit. You know, a modern Lightning may have 110 compute units in it. So if you try and update that, an over-the-air update, you have to update potentially up to 110 modules. If you're updating a Tesla, you're updating one. Okay, so you're just look at the complexity there. And also you're able to innovate faster and faster and faster if you've got better software engineers. So that's the competitive advantage that they have. And I agree, Elon is very controversial, says a lot of wild things, but he's incredibly brilliant. And like all brilliant people, he's got some ecocentrics or eccentricities, I guess is the word over here. Yeah, but he's brilliant. But they have delivered and developed a car that has software as its core component. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing car. My son leased one in Hawaii. He's working for the admiral there in charge of the Pacific Fleet, and
Sure.
I went over at Christmas and I could not get over what a
Mhm.
delight it is to ride in, and
Yeah.
and
Also, with these updates as well, like the updates will come down, like, you know, a friend of mine had an update one evening where the car got about 0.01 or 0.1% faster overnight with a software update. He just woke up, the car came in and said, I did a software update, the car is now 0.1% faster. He was excited about that. You know, his name was Mike, but Mike couldn't tell the difference whether it was 1% faster or not. But he was still excited about the prospect that it could be, you know?
they had me with the Christmas package where the cars are reindeers, and when you turn the
Absolutely.
on, it plays whatever. I can't remember, but yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so one of the things that I was invited, me and a million other people, to We Robot, where the Cybercab was unveiled, and Optimus danced through the streets in LA, wherever we were. I think it was the Paramount Studio. But were you there for that? I don't know why you
I
were
did not go to that. I was actually working with another automotive client at the time, so I couldn't quite leave that client to go to a competitor. It would have been.
Yeah, well, no, understood. But for
Yeah.
me at that moment, and then I've also visited the Megapack factory in Lathrop, California. It seemed to me that this was not a company that was about necessarily selling EVs, except to supplement the volume of data that they have. But also to, what really struck me is that I think Tesla's cost per mile is something like 30 to 40% lower than Waymo. And I live in Waymo land half the year, which is Phoenix. You can't go a couple of feet without, encountering a Waymo. So I'm just wondering who you think the winner is, because we own Uber also, we own Tesla, and we own Google. Is there a single winner, or how do you see that space unfolding?
I think first of all, there's over 3 million Teslas on the road, with over 1 million being added to that fleet per year. I think there's 3.3 million. So you're looking at an addressable market of, at the end of this year, 4 million units that potentially could become robo-taxis. So, you take a look at Waymo and you go, there's hundreds, maybe thousands at maximum. So you just take a look at the scale, number one, right? Number two, the way Tesla's organized, being a little bit technical, Tesla has a AI compute module in the vehicle that basically drives the vehicle. And then it has another compute module that actually watches the software driving the car. Yeah, it understands driver behavior, it understands what happens, et cetera, et cetera. Multiply that by 3 million units, and you're starting to get real massive data at volume. And that AI core has been, and the learning from that has been part of the core that's been able to be developed into XAI, and that has allowed XAI as an AI platform itself to become one of the leading, if not the leading, AI platforms within 2 years of being launched. That's just straight out of the gate. That's incredible. But it goes to show the power of the learning of the AI platform within the Tesla car. Yeah. So it's been able to accelerate a bunch of different things. When it comes down to robo taxis, um, the strategy for Waymo and the strategy for Tesla is radically different. So you're not comparing apples to apples. In looking at the Tesla strategy, you're looking at basically a human style approach. We have weak eyes and a big brain. So in the Tesla, it's a car with basic cameras. So cameras in the front of the car, and then a massive compute in the brain to actually compute what's happening in the vehicle. From there, you're able to kind of drive and do that sort of thing. But it's not expensive material. Waymo, $70,000 Jag with another $80,000 worth of stuff with radar, LiDAR, and cameras attached to it for your unit cost to be about $150,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So you take a $35,000 car or a $30,000 robo taxi, and you compare that to $150,000 unit cost, and there's a difference, right? So right now, if you take a look at Uber, the actual price for your typical Uber ride can be somewhere in the $2 to $3 per mile range. Using this sort of $30,000 car with dumb cameras, I don't want to be, but dumb cameras and a very large AI brain that is being proven and enhanced through the XI AI platform, plus being proven and enhanced through 3 million cars driving, hundreds of miles per day. You get a very, very reliable system. And the price point for that actual robo-taxi, they believe they can get it down to like 15 cents a mile. So if you compare Uber to $2 to $3 per mile to 15 cents, it's an incredible difference. And then if you put the Waymo in on top of that with the very expensive solution, to me, it's just a runaway game. So it's not a matter of who wins the race. It's a matter of who can get to scale quickest. And Uber, Tesla has the biggest scale game. I think the big thing for the future and how fast this can go. So right now, the sort of self-driving robo-taxi market was about 0.45 billion in 24. That was the sort of size of the market. If you look at it going to 2030, estimates range from 73 to 90% CAGR per year to get to getting into 2030. Sorry. But that's huge. That's a massive opportunity. I think the way I think it's hard to really sort of like put that into actual real value numbers for a stock. But if you look at it and think about it, the real barrier is going to be city by city regulation. So
Right.
cities, yeah, so right now San Francisco, Austin, London, etc. Each city is now experimenting with sort of like robo taxi style areas. Now, if you can get to a federal level regulation, the same way that Uber did it. So remember Uber when they came out, they went city by city. They had to fight, councils, unions, etc. But now Uber is accepted at a federal level. So if you take that pathway and you go, how quickly can you now accelerate that pathway, given that it's already been trodden before? So you move from essentially going from, you move from, I'm sorry about that in the background, but you move from sort of a pathway of, maybe multiple years to go city to getting into a situation where you are going maybe in 2 or 3 years to get to a federal level, then that 73.6 CAGR gets blown out of the water. It really drastically improves. So it's huge. Yeah.
Wow. And so when you think about, and maybe you don't think about investing, that's what I think about all the time, but if you thought about investing, where else would you be invested outside of Tesla to benefit from this?
I think there's a number of different car companies that are moving in that direction. I think you don't want to be number 3 or 4. You want to be number 1 or 2. Yeah. And I think it's pretty hard. I think it's pretty hard to beat Tesla as a very prime thing. I think also there's a number of suppliers into the automotive industry that are trying to figure out where they fit. Yeah, and traditionally there was a lot of suppliers providing all the parts to the OEMs, and they fit them together. Now you have suppliers trying to figure out where their value proposition is. So I think in the supply base, there will be winners that will be able to figure out what their software improvement is. Think about motion control. So motion control systems are about steering and wheel movement. So steering and active braking. You take a look at those particular systems, and there will be winners there because that's going to be huge. And there's a software component there that'll work. Additionally to that, then you say, okay, well, how can those companies leverage into things like robotics? Okay, so when you think about a robot, it's motion control. So those type of companies have a good opportunity to move from suspension, steering, wheels, tires into robot arms and things like that. So I think there's companies there that we can take a look at. I think there's also companies that are doing in the traditional space that actually have very good software arms and software capability, and they're really looking at how they get into faster delivery loops and virtual sort of like validation. I think if you can get those delivery loops validation right, then a lot of the big car companies will say, okay, you're a bet for the future. Yeah. But if some of those suppliers don't do that, then they're going to go by the wayside.
Yeah.
And I think also some of the OEMs,
Yeah.
some of the OEMs, if they don't really get their software game together, I think they could be seriously bad bets too.
Really.
Yeah, I think it's they've all tried, but they got to get serious, and they've got to go further, faster. I think part of the issue is the cultural change that they have to go through is significant. Like you can't take 5,000 engineers that are used to developing software in a modular way with suppliers and say, now you're going to develop software to platform approach. The culture has to change dramatically. I mean, it's just, and you can't drop a guy in from Apple or from Google or Microsoft into those cultures and say, we're now going to change and do it this way. We're now going to do it the Google way, or we're going to do it the Apple way. It just doesn't work.
Right.
So, and VW found that out, and they've now, gone the R2 platform from Rivian, and they're having Rivian do the VW platform at the moment. And I think, when they went with the Carriot approach, they basically took large numbers of people and said, now you're a software startup. No, you're not. So, it's to transform the traditional companies so they can catch up is going to be very hard. But they have to take a sort of entrepreneurial, startup type approach versus trying to just convert people over. You need to have traditional guys that understand safety. You got to understand NHTSA. You got to understand how to not kill people, and you got to understand the lessons of 100 years of. But you got to pair that in a way that it allows innovation to flourish with software engineers that know how to engineer software.
I mean, that's a pretty bleak picture you're painting, because we can just go back as far as Xerox and say one of the great innovators invented the mouse, but who monetized it? Microsoft and Apple. So
a cautionary tale is maybe take a look at Motorola.
Yes.
Mobile phones. They remember, I don't know. I mean, I remember back when I got my first phones in the 1990s. They were all Nokias and they were all Motorola's, and they had all different form factors, and we flip thing and all that sort of stuff. And they dominated the market. And then Apple came along with a sheet of glass with a single aspect ratio. And the aspect ratio on the iPhone or the iPad has not changed since the very first one that was launched. And they, instead of like trying to change user behavior by having a new flip phone or having a new keyboard or a new user interface, Apple kept the user interface kind of the same. It's never really changed. The form factor's never changed, and it's basically all the innovation has gone into the software that provides that experience, right? And now Motorola, where is it? Yeah. So
it's with BlackBerry. It's hanging out with BlackBerry.
Exactly. Yeah, in the party zone. And so I think the larger automotive companies have really got that challenge. That's an existential threat, and they got to rise to that challenge. And we work with those OEMs, and we're trying to help them through that journey. And we're helping some of the suppliers as well. But it's a very significant challenge.
How's that going?
It's mostly on culture side. I think there's a lot of smart people, but the culture of being able to develop platform software is very different than developing module software. And platform approaches are hard, very, very hard, especially when you get into something as complex as a vehicle. It's really, really tough and difficult. So it's going well, but at the end of the day, Tesla's not slowing down any. Rivian's not slowing down any. And then you've got other companies that are like Lucid, you've got McLaren, Aston Martin. None of those companies are slowing down. GM is really starting to get its game together. Ford are putting an announcement out, I think, on the 11th of August and what they're doing. But it's going fast. But the really platform software companies that happen to be in cars, i.e. Tesla,
That's
are
right.
Yeah, they are leading the way, and they're not slowing down at all. So, just to try and catch up with where the Model S was when it was launched a couple of years ago, is not good enough.
No. And I want to be respectful of your time because you've been so generous, but so fascinating to me as an investor, and makes me think maybe we're on the right track here at Laffer Tengler. We've been focused on robotics. My dream is Optimus is a home healthcare solution, and I order something on Amazon. It comes in a cyber cab or a robo-taxi, doesn't matter, and
Okay.
if my kids want to take the keys away, I'm still free.
Yes. Well, I mean, my dream is I want Optimus to help me with the sheep farm.
Be a little Optimus sheep dog that rounds everybody up. That's
Yeah, well, or doing all the hard, heavy lifting, but that might be me being optimistic. So I don't know.
touche. Well, Adrian, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Very insightful and enlightening. And I know we're going to get a lot of questions. So I really appreciate you,
Okay.
laying it out.
I really enjoy meeting you. Really enjoyed the podcast. Call me anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrian. Okay, thanks. So we're done, folks. We're done. That was it for this week. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.